pick a card, any card.
Ooh. Yeah.
When you hear that phrase, it makes you think of cards, but who often says a phrase like that?
Between the guy on the corner of 42nd Street who's trying to rip me off, there's that guy, and then I think of a magician.
Yes, exactly. I didn't know they had a 42nd Street where you are in Nashville, but of course they do. So it's a classic phrase, and I think it's an apt way to start the conversation today because it not only applies to cards in general, but also specifically a card from the tarot deck known as the Magician, which is the card we chose to represent you in this podcast, The Heart of the Cards.
I mean, I love what you did with the drawing.
Thank you.
It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
You made me look really cool. Yeah, well, I'm very interested in this conversation today because I have to be very honest with you. Even though I am familiar with what they are, I really don't know a lot about the cards at all or the specifics of the characters. So I trusted you a lot when you were like, this is what we're doing. I'm like, okay, hopefully that doesn't mean I'm an axe murderer, who also could be a card that could be a good thing.
It's a different part of the deck.
Right.
Wouldn't it be weird if like this was the reveal episode where like some, resentment I've been hiding from you all these years? This is what the Magician card means, Eric. It means you're a bad friend.
Oh,
that's not where this is going.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank goodness. It'll be a whole different podcast.
A whole different podcast. That's coming next year. And I also want to make clear to any listeners and followers out there, I am not promoting the idea that the tarot deck is some sort of magical deck. Certainly not it's some people relate it to Satanism and all the no. That's not my angle on it. And I don't think it holds any magical powers. Like any exercise, it's what you put into it that you get out of it. So, but another couple of things that I love about the tarot deck in particular is that, I like comics and each card in the deck in a way is kind of like its own panel because everything within each card is very specific about what it's referring to. And there are actually characters like the Magician and they mean certain things and they mean certain things in different orientations, like they're either right side up or upside down. And you very often when you use the tarot deck to ask a question, it frames it from the past to the present to the future, which is a timeline. So it's almost like a story in itself.
Okay.
Which is, I think, a positive, healthy way to think about this kind of exercise. But we're just focusing on one card today, the Magician card as it represents Eric Stuart in the Heart of the Cards. Let's get to it.
Welcome to the Heart of the Cards, a conversation about creativity, inspiration, and dealing with what we're dealt.
Hey, this is Dan Green.
And Eric, the Magician Stuart.
And this is episode 25 of the Heart of the Cards.
25. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm impressed.
We haven't dropped an episode in a few weeks. It's nice to get back to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've both had busy things.
I know. It's almost like we have other lives.
Additional life.
Yes. All good things, though. All good things. We, trying to. Maybe we should have been jugglers, not the Magician.
I need that skill better. Skill better. Yes. And it's been great to be able to meet a lot of fans. That's something that we've been doing over the last several months since this podcast first started almost a year ago.
Yep.
At the end of August, we'll have our 1 year anniversary. But we've been doing a lot of that, and that's been great. And it's been really wonderful to hear some feedback from fans. I think it happens almost every time we appear now that at least one or two people say, "Hey, I listen."
Yeah.
And thanks so much.
Means a lot.
And it really does. It's very exciting to us, and we take none of that for granted. So if anybody hearing this right now obviously is listening to it, and so we appreciate you for doing that, and please spread the good word if you have good words to say about it. That
and obviously,
awesome.
I mean, we've mentioned this before, but when we hear that some of the things that we've discussed have gotten people to get either back into their creative outlet, or maybe
Yeah, I
to
love
pursue-
that story.
Yeah, it's really so nice to hear. And both Dan and I will always tell you that we are not experts on this journey that we've been on, but we hope that by telling you our experiences, it might at least inspire you to do your own thing. Because why not? Why not?
Yeah. Actually, that the use of the term expert reminded me of a phrase I heard once, that you are the expert of your own life, and that's about it. It's like,
Yeah,
there's
right?
some truth to that.
Yeah.
So let's dig into this
Yeah.
magician card in the tarot. I was first excited by the idea of the tarot, I think, when I saw a James Bond movie, Live and Let Die, Roger Moore. Is that the one?
Yeah.
Yeah. And great song. Great McCartney song. That was Wings, right? He was
Correct.
in Wings
Yes.
by that point.
Yes.
And anyway, so I think it was Roger Moore's first turn as Bond. I'm not sure, but definitely one of his earliest films, if not the first one. But there's a dramatic scene where, one of the characters is a character who reads the tarot. That I think the primary villain is giving that a lot of credence, a lot of power, and there's a card called the Lovers, which of course in a James Bond movie precedes a moment where Bond seduces the lovely woman.
Of course.
And of course. And then there's another moment where the death card, I think, is revealed. And these meanings are obvious, right? And I think the obvious element of what these cards convey can really grab someone. Though death doesn't always mean death, and love doesn't always mean love.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to ask you. Is that for what the little bit that I know is that what you think would be like on the nose is not necessarily the
Not
only
necessarily
way
so.
you can read those. No pun intended.
Yeah, because it can be in one position, it's the affirmative definition of what it is, and then in the upside down position, it can be opposite or just different than that. So that's how that can. That
Of course,
shape-
the skeptic would tell you, well, that just makes sure that you're covering all bases. If you can, right,
right. I told you your fortune. You just read it wrong.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, okay, so. A lot of people also don't necessarily know that the tarot deck is reflected in our modern playing deck of cards. So there are 4 suits in the tarot deck. And then there's what's called the major arcana, these figures that exist outside of it. And those are the more powerful ones, and the magician is one of those. The 4 suits in our modern deck are clubs in the tarot. Those are wands or rods. We have spades, obviously. Those are swords in the tarot. We have cups in the tarot, which is hearts in our modern deck, and pentacles in the tarot is diamonds in our modern deck. Anyway, and they each, again, they have their own meaning. So, but with the magician, one of the major arcana, I'm going to read from, and anybody can do this. They can look up tarot deck card meanings. It's really easy to get into. I found a nice selection from labyrinthos.co. Online, and I'm just going to read you how they set this up.
Okay, great.
The magician is one tarot card that is filled with symbolism. The central figure depicts someone with one hand pointed to the sky, while the other hand points to the ground, as if to say, as above, so below. That's a old-fashioned saying, by the way. And to summarize what that saying means is that the earth reflects the heaven. The outer world reflects what's within. The microcosm reflects the macrocosm. Earth reflects God. It can also be interpreted that the magician symbolizes the ability to act as a go-between between the world above and the contemporary human world. On his table, the magician also wields all suits of the tarot, which I just described. So you have the wand and the sword and the cup and the pentacle. You'll see that in the illustration that I made, because I'm following, no pun intended, I'm following suit, as it were.
Yeah, I like that.
This symbolizes the 4 elements being connected by this magician, the 4 elements being earth, water, air, and fire. The infinity sign on his head indicates the infinite possibilities of creation with the will. And in my version of the magician card, I have the infinity sign symbol, that sort of 8 on its side, but I also extended it out to look like a torus ribbon, which is another mathematical expression of infinity. So anyway, so that's you, man. No.
Whoa.
Right. You're that big of a deal. There's the upright position, and I'll get into that. In the upright position, the magician is a representation of pure willpower. With the power of the elements and the suits, he takes the potential innate fool and molds it into a being of power and competence. He is connecting the force between heaven and earth, and he understands the meaning behind the words "as above, so below." And so you bring things into creation, calling upon these elements around you. So I know why I associated that with you, but how do you resonate to that?
Wow. Well, I'm flattered that you thought of that character to represent me. When I hear the word magician, I think of smoke and mirrors. I think of
a trick.
A trick. And once you reveal how it's done, you realize that it's not, and that it's fake, that you're fooling someone.
Right.
So, but this description is not so much of your,
No.
David Copperfield kind of, whatever. It's not that. It's much more of a. I mean, it's almost like a filter from a very powerful force to make things more accessible and be able to share that. Almost like you're adding the ingredients, and then here I've baked the cake, the baker rather than the magician.
Yeah.
But no, it's very interesting. And before I ask you why you picked this, I just wanted, and not to put you on the spot because maybe we can look it up, but when were the tarot created? Like, how far back?
Oh, yeah.
Just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
I'm just curious of the history of that, because that would also probably help me understand why a magician might be considered something different even in a different time period, right? Because so many of throughout history, we think of that, the Svengalis, the people that are the advisors, right? They using, sometimes not for good.
Yeah.
Nefarious.
So the earliest dated tarot evidence references the 1440s and 1450s.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there you. So yeah. When you think of who is?
So magic was real then.
Right. Magic is real. So
we had the it's fake thing comes from the modern concept that magic can't do those things. But
right. And also magicians are almost scientists back then because they would the magic, and I'm using air quotes, the magic that they created a lot of times were not to fool you, but because they discovered something that happened, whether it was chemically or whatever, they could do something. You'd be like, wow, like smoke just popped up. And it's like, but it's not because the magician was trying to put one over on you. It was because there's magic. I made something happen. Like, this is cool. I would think, based on the history and where this might have started, I would think that the creative side of it, yes, I mean that's and once again I'm flattered that.
Well, there's no scientist in the tarot.
Right. So
I was just backing up the point you were finishing. I didn't interrupt where you were going.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So this person, this entity is creating, but is also creating. I mean, I've said to people, I'm not a doctor. I can't do stuff with medicine, but I can use music to heal, and that's my magic. Like, I've actually said that.
Right.
Because of the power of art the power of creativity.
Sure.
So
And you're starting by doing that for yourself.
Right.
And then it helps others.
Right. So I think that would be something that would connect to that. There seems to be this sort of drive and this force that's also part of the descriptive that you were giving. I mean, that's something that I think is pretty obvious. Anybody who knows me, and maybe that's why I need to take a nap in the middle of the day, is because I do push myself a lot, and I sometimes find myself exhausted. But yeah, no, I'm curious to what your reasons were, and that might even give me even more clarity on what.
Yeah. I just wanted to flatter you.
Ah,
just kidding.
Nice. And you're the Joker, right? You're the Joker. That was your card.
No, I'm the Hermit. I'm the Hermit,
right.
Unfortunately. But I think it's suitable to you in a lot of ways. But the most obvious one is that you make things, you transform things from different elements of your life and create something to benefit the world.
Oh, thank you.
In your creativity. And you do that most, I think, compelling to you in your music, but you do it in a lot of the other things you do as well. Obviously, the voiceover work that you're known for, but you didn't just do the voiceover work, you also helped get those shows done.
Mm-hmm.
And that is no small magic trick in its own right.
That is
because
true.
You were in a challenging position of having some responsibility, having a lot of responsibility, and maybe just enough authority,
right?
But you weren't the top dog.
No.
So you could, and yet a lot was put on your shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of other people might have crumbled under that combination.
Well, I appreciate the compliment. I mean, it's how we deal with these things. I think that there were times that I might have crumbled, but not let it affect my getting the job done. But
and you always speak very highly of Norman, and I'm not throwing anybody under the bus.
No. I loved. I mean, as much as it was a tough gig, I mean, I loved it. Yeah. I loved working on the shows. And there's something about that, the life experience of deadlines and things that go wrong, and obviously hopefully as we get older, we realize that certain things are not worth freaking out about. But in the moment, when those things are presented to you, the crisis that is going on, you and having to think on your feet, I really think that those life lessons for me have taught me how to handle other things, that are not related to that world. But yeah, that was a lot. It was a lot going on, a lot of moving parts, and hopefully, I mean, and you could tell. I mean, the fan base likes the shows. They don't necessarily need to know, the blood, sweat, and tears that went into making each one of those things. It's the end product, right? That was the goal, is that we need to still put some quality out there and something that people will enjoy. They don't need to know that I slept on the couch in Pro Tools 3 and overnight so that I could dub.
That was just for the first movie. That was just for the first
right, but things like that. It's like I don't know if old Eric right now, I mean older Eric would be like, that's not happening.
Right. Well, another reason that I think it is an apt association to who you are as a person is this reference to having command over separate elements. So not everybody who can write a song can record one. Not everyone who can do a vocal performance can direct one.
Right.
And you also are very handy in other parts of your life. Mm-hmm. The place that you live has been reformed in your own vision. Mm-hmm. And, somebody could say, we all do that too wherever we live. We give it our own spin. But not everybody builds a pergola with a misting system for the plants.
That's true. Actually, the misting system is both for the plants and for the people when it gets too hot.
I appreciate that. If I ever visit, I
Yes.
will definitely be needing that misting system.
Yes.
I have my self-misting system, but I'm sure yours is better.
Yeah. But that's interesting, the point of multitasking.
Yeah.
What is it? The jack of all trades, master of none. But like, I do try to do the multitasking things that I do, all of them to the best of my ability.
As well. Right. As well
I'll
as
give
can.
you the
that shows.
I'll tell you when it's something that's not in my wheelhouse.
Yes, you do. Yes,
It's
you do.
like, oh, that's not my thing. The video stuff, no, that's not my thing, or this is not my thing. If it's audio, whatever, This is my thing. But yeah, I appreciate that. That's part of this too. Is that I think as we travel this road in our creativity, we want to know how things are done, so that we can at least understand them. Whether we need to do them all ourselves or not, especially in a production team, we don't have to. But like a good captain of the ship knows like what's going on in the engine room, knows how the parts are, like how the things work. But I don't have to get my wrenches out and start fixing it. I've got someone who's skilled at that to do it. Understanding how things work. I mean, even when I've done home projects and hired people to do things that are a little bit beyond my skill set, I still research how the job is done.
Sure.
So that I can at least make sure as it's being done, they didn't skip a step or whatever. Not that I'm going to tell them what to do, but it just makes me feel more comfortable to understand all aspects of any production.
Of course. That only makes sense. Yeah. And having a greater comprehension of how to do multiple things, I think you'd probably agree, helps you to understand more things.
Mm-hmm.
Not every knowledge set is transferable, but a lot of it is.
Yep.
Learning you are much, much better with Pro Tools than I am, which is an audio software, and probably one of the most ubiquitous. And I know just enough to get stuff done and maybe to get into a little trouble, and you know how to get me out of that.
Sometimes.
But even I can recognize, always, as far as I can recall, but even I can see that there are many similarities to the way that Pro Tools is structured as programs that I'm better with, like Photoshop and After
Right,
Effects.
and I throw it back to you when
that
it's
sort of
something that
Right.
it's a program that you're familiar with. It's the same sort of thing.
Right.
But yes, you know, I was just having a conversation about working in Pro Tools actually with my wife Lindsay. We were talking about school and degrees and all of these things.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, I didn't go to school for audio. I got a job in a studio and learned audio. And when it came time to, dive into more, technical stuff, I watched, I listened, and I researched. I tried to, absorb as much as I could. And now I am not a Pro Tools master. There are things that in audio that I do not do. I farm those things out.
You don't do 5. What's the level
5.1?
of mix now?
Now it's even like 7.1. I don't do like that kind of mixing.
No, that's what I mean. That's like 7.1 now.
Yeah, I also don't master. I don't mix or master my own music stuff. I send that out to someone else who is better at doing that than I am. It's also good to also
it's a
have
refined skill set.
to have another set of ears listen to what I'm doing. But
that's always good.
knowing your limitations. But yeah, it's like if you want to learn something, if you want to do something, there's so many places that you can get information that, I spent, I think the first 2 weeks when I first got Pro Tools just watching videos. I was watching YouTube videos on Pro Tools just to understand some stuff a little bit better. Even though I learned how to work as an audio engineer, with tape in analog world. But yeah, it's there's still so much
Wait, with tape and so the sound sticks to the tape. Is that
it's
how that
crazy?
works?
It's some sort of magnetic thing.
Magnets.
Well, right now, like today, I opened up Pro Tools to work on our session today, our podcast today, and I noticed a new button on the on the screen, and I looked up and it's this big letter Q, and I was like, what? I said, wow, that's kind of cool, and I hovered over it and it told me it was a quantize button, which is, for those of you who deal with music, it basically can take the information, specifically MIDI information, and you can lock it to the nearest beat, whether it's like a half note or a quarter note or a 16th note, whatever. Just in case your performance is a little sloppy, it helps lock things to the grid of tempo. And normally you have to pull down the menu and find that on the pull-down menu. Well, now they've decided to put a button right on the main screen. And I was like, I just learned something new today. And I was very excited. I was like, thank you. Someone must have said, you know what? We need this easier to find. So anyway, not to sidetrack, but yes, but I do appreciate that connection too with the magician. Do you feel like that is not something that you also have? I mean, with different categories?
Well, in creating these images for our podcast, it was from a visual perspective, I wanted variation.
Right.
Something that was also somewhat representational. I'm not doing a drawing of you.
Right, no, I know that.
But you could wear that character's clothes, though, and it would work. I don't look exactly like the hermit, but same deal. I could put on that costume and I could, be put into that role.
So you were both trying to accomplish the visual connection as well as the personality traits or that describe.
Yeah, exactly. And even to an extent, the interaction, because, and we'll get to my card in the next episode.
Right.
But to compare us, and we've said this many times, there's a lot of ways that we're simpatico, but we're very different people.
Yes.
And I think I know I still benefit from your command of how things work, not just when the reader is not working at a convention appearance and you're like, just toggle the Bluetooth. Yeah. Okay, right. You told me that 5 times already. Oh, and thanks for lending me your reader because mine's broken.
No problem.
But simple stuff like that, but also the terrain of how to go about. I mean, you essentially functioned when it comes to convention appearances as an agent for me for the appearances that we would do together. I mean, I know you could look at it as you were just sort of shepherding me into the relationship you already had, with whatever appearance that was. But I've benefited from your ability to say, this is what the waters run like, and here's a good way to navigate through that.
Sure.
So,
well, I think as people probably will be able to understand based on listening to even our conversations, because our personalities are different, but that do work together. In that world, we couldn't both be the way that I am.
No, I let you, or I benefit from you taking that position.
And I benefit from like it works that way.
Right.
It's not like good cop, bad cop. It's just that there's definitely times where, our personalities are so that's not necessarily where you are all the time, where I'm there more of the time, and I'm not talking physically there. I mean, in terms of that dynamic, right? And when the time comes for you to have to speak up and take charge like that, it also reminds me that that's a big deal. Like whatever is going on, that's a big deal.
If Dan gets upset, it's a problem.
Well, if Dan tells me that if there's really an issue, then because I do think that you are, and I envy this a little bit. I do think that you are, you let things sort of roll off your back, and you pick and choose your battles very wisely.
Thank you.
And I've worked very hard on not having that hair trigger, which I think I've done very well in the last couple of years.
You've mellowed so much.
Well, thank you. But I do when I see, and that's why it's kind of like The Boy Who Cried Wolf. It's like if you're constantly complaining about something, then it's like, well, is any of this a big deal? Right? But if it's like, oh, wait a second, this is bothering you, this must really be an issue. And maybe this is something we really need to focus on rather than the little things that might tick me off. Right? But anyway,
I see what
yes,
you're saying.
but
Yes,
yes. Not that I complain about everything, but
You don't. No, not at all.
No,
Not at all.
but I just like, it because of my the stress level and all the things that I deal with just in general in my personality, my OCD stuff or whatever it is. I find that when there is more order on what I'm expecting, I can relax and just go with the flow. My goal when I make my appearance is I'm trying to have a great interaction and be a great guest,
Right.
and have a great interaction with the fans, and I want it to be a great experience for everyone. So if I'm not thinking about did they book my hotel room or not, and I can just relax, it just makes it a better experience. So when little things get out of whack, it messes with my mind,
Right.
So anyway.
Right. Yeah. Well, also I wanted to point out that meaning that you initially started with the magician being a trickster, that's actually the reversed meaning of this card.
Yeah, well, that's what you've explained.
So
that's interesting.
I'll read again from Labyrinthos. I'm also somewhat paraphrasing as I do this.
Yeah, please.
But in the reversed magician meaning, when you obtain the magician reversed, it might mean it's time for you to implement some changes. While right side up, the magician represents true power, the reversed magician is a master of illusion. The magic he performs is one of deception and trickery. You may be lured in by the showmanship of his arts, but behind that, there may be an intention to manipulate for selfish gain, which I've never been known to be true of you.
Oh, thank you.
Getting this card might mean that there is someone who pretends to have your best interests at hand when the opposite is true. So which is another thing about the tarot. Does the card refer to you exactly or something in your environment? That's also
right. And I appreciate you defending my character by not associating that with me. But I'll give it a little bit of credibility. There is that the showmanship side, the exaggerated version on stage, or the presentation. It is a facade. It is part of the. It's part of the.
Sometimes
craft.
you need to put that out there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not doing what you owe the fans.
Right, and I'm also
It's not a lie.
No,
it's like fulfilling a pledge.
Yes, and even when I'm not playing a character, but I'm Eric Stuart on stage playing music, I'm playing a character. I am playing a character that's Eric Stuart.
Right.
It's still me, but it's the performance side of me. So that of side of this explanation, description of the magician makes sense a little bit, because not that I'm trying to fool the audience, but I'm definitely it's showmanship.
Right. Well, I love that. I love that interpretation of it. I would also suggest another interpretation is, and again, this is the exercise of just considering these ideas that are not magical ideas because they're in a deck of cards, right? Mm-hmm. These are classic human condition experiences. And sometimes it's worth considering, am I making something because I really want to say something? Do I really have something to say? Or is this just a little bit of BS? Is this just a bit of ego or something else? And I think we all have those levels of trying to determine where we're coming from when we create anything. Mm-hmm. And it's up to us as artists to remain honest about something that's just a shell game versus something that's truly magical.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's funny that you say that. I before we got into the studio today. I never know when creativity is going to hit, but I was just noodling around on the guitar, and I wrote this little progression, and then I came upstairs and quickly recorded something just as an instrumental into Pro Tools, just so I had something as a reference. And as I was writing it, I said, I like this melody. I think I would have something to say if I wrote some words to this. This would be something good. And for a moment, I thought before that, is this worth me turning on Pro Tools and recording this little idea, or should I just put the guitar down? So yes, we definitely sort of are, we're filtering that, hopefully creatives, are filtering
Right.
that. You know, I will say that maybe back in the day, I tried to create things that I thought would be
Catchy,
what people
popular.
wanted,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
A style that maybe, but probably in the last 20 years, it's more of like, do I like this song? Like I really have
Right.
gotten to the point now where if I don't want to listen to it, and I'm talking even after it's been out. I just listened to an album I released like 3 years ago. I was in the car and I just put it on just to listen to something else besides songs I'm working on right now. And I went, this is a pretty good album. I got to say, I enjoy listening to this again. And songs that I had forgotten.
That's
like
great.
They came
That's
on.
great.
And it's not an ego thing. It's really not an ego thing. It's more,
No, I get you, man.
I did
get you.
this. I did this because it made me happy then. And I guess it was the right thing to do because I like it now. I don't like everything I've ever recorded, but I will tell you that the majority of what I've done as a musician is honest.
Right. I believe that for sure. And early on, everyone starts off by imitating or, whatever you want to call it, emulating. So, well, that's great, man. Well, I wanted to get your reaction on that.
Yes.
And I think
Thank you.
that it is still a really good card to associate with who you are and all of the magical things that you do.
Thank you. And I'm very flattered that you chose that. And for those of you who have not seen the artwork, you can see it obviously when you listen to the podcast. You can see the visual of it. We also have it on our tables at the conventions on a beautiful sign.
It's true. It's true.
That Dan created. But they're also, I mean, the artwork is really cool. It's one thing to be a really cool character, but it's also really cool that it looks cool too. Yeah.
Well, I love different versions of the tarot deck. Some fans have kindly suggested that I should do a whole deck, which I love the idea. It would take me a while to do, but...
So, like, is there like a set number of cards in the deck like there are with like, a regular deck of cards, a 52 pickup?
Yeah. It's... more than 52, it's 78.
78.
And 78, but remember that you have the major arcana.
Yep.
Or some people might pronounce that differently, arcana, which includes the magician.
Yep.
And so there are 22 of those.
Okay.
So when you take 22 away from 78, you get pretty close to the 52 cards.
I was told there'd be no math. Why did you have to do that?
So,
oh, that's cool.
There are 56 minor arcana. So, yeah, very close to 52. But anyway, so it would be, like if it takes a day at least to draw a really good illustration for each card.
Yep.
I know it's still math, but that would take a while.
So I'm going to just throw this out there, not to give you more projects for Andromeda Productions, but
I love it when you say, "Hey, Dan, you could draw some."
Yeah, well,
just add it to the list.
Maybe if you weren't good at drawing, no, it just made me think. It just made me think. Like, could you imagine? And I don't know. Maybe that's the kind of thing that's crowd funded or whatever. Could you imagine a deck of tarot cards where you had all the characters based upon your favorite voice actor people? Right? You had like Wayne Grayson and Greg Abbey and Darren Dunstan and Erica Schroeder and Lisa Ortiz. Like you had...
But am I representing the actors?
Oh, no, like you did for me.
Cards?
You are representing the personality trait
right.
of that actor... that person,
Right.
But in that doesn't have to look like them, like the magician doesn't look like me, right? As you said.
Or how about this?
Yeah.
How about this?
Yeah.
We come up with a show where we each portray major arcana from the tarot.
Oh my goodness! But that would require acting, and I don't know. Yeah.
But you fake it really well.
Thank you. That's the magician.
Ta-da!
And scene.
And on that note, I think that's a great place to end this conversation today. And thank you, Eric, for being as magical as you are. And thank you to all of the listeners and followers who appear with us every week. And I also have been loving to see in the comments, people are just finding out about the Kazuki Takahashi episode that was our very first episode that we released, and there are still people who are just discovering that and saying wonderful things. We so appreciate all of that feedback, and we really look forward to continuing this conversation about creativity, inspiration, and dealing with what you're dealt.
Thanks for listening to The Heart of the Cards with Dan Green and Eric Stuart. We hope this conversation in some way spoke to you. Whatever your journey, we look forward to crossing paths again in the next episode. This is Veronica Taylor, and on behalf of Andromeda Productions, we wish you well.
Andromeda, always a sound choice.